Desperate after being fired, she cried alone, unaware she was being watched. A stranger approached quietly, saying only, "I've been in your place before." Without understanding why, she accepted the coffee. And in that gesture, something began to change. Days later, she discovered the man knew more about her dismissal than he should. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. Emily walked through the mirrored hallways of Horizon Construction with her usual dedication. At 32, she carried 6 years of loyalty to that company on her shoulders, where she had started as an administrative assistant and now held the position of junior financial manager. She woke up every day at 5 in the morning, prepared coffee for her sick father, organized his medications, and only then allowed herself to think about herself. She couldn't remember the last time she had gone out with friends or been on a date. Life had been reduced to spreadsheets, meetings, and caring for her father, who suffered from a rare degenerative disease that consumed not only his health, but also the family's savings. That Monday, Emily adjusted the reports in her folder as she walked toward the meeting room. She had spent the entire weekend analyzing data to present a cost optimization proposal that could save the company almost $200,000 a year. She smiled discreetly, imagining that she might finally get the promotion to senior manager she had been dreaming of. With the raise, she could finally pay for the experimental treatment the doctor had suggested for her father. "Emily, can you come to my office now?" Robert's voice, the administrative director, surprised her in the hallway. There was something strange in his tone, a formality that didn't match the usual treatment between them. "Sure, I'll just drop these reports in the meeting." "The reports can wait," he interrupted without looking her in the eyes. "It's urgent." Emily's stomach churned. She knew this procedure well. In recent weeks, several colleagues had been suddenly called and returned only to empty their drawers. The restructuring that everyone had been discussing in the hallways seemed to have reached her. In Robert's office, there were 2 more people, the human resources representative and a lawyer Emily had never seen before. On the desk was a sealed manila envelope. "Please sit down," said Robert, pointing to the only empty chair. "As you may imagine, we're going through significant changes in the company's organizational structure." The following words reached Emily's ears as if they were submerged. Phrases like, "Unfortunately, your position has been affected. Nothing personal. We appreciate your dedication," and "severance package" floated in the cold, air-conditioned room. 6 years of sleepless nights, skipped lunches, and sacrificed weekends summed up in a 15-minute mechanical speech. "Any questions?" Robert concluded, after pushing the envelope in her direction. Emily wanted to ask many things. She wanted to know why precisely her, who had never failed to deliver, was being let go. She wanted to understand how she would pay next month's rent, her father's medications, the next doctor's appointment. She wanted to scream that she had rejected 2 better job offers in recent years, out of loyalty to that company. But she swallowed all of this and only asked, "May I at least present the report I prepared? It shows how the company can save—" "That won't be necessary," cut in the woman from Human Resources with a polite but cold smile. "You'll have 1 hour to collect your belongings. We've provided a box." 1 hour. 6 years reduced to 60 minutes. Emily signed the documents with a trembling hand, refusing to let the tears fall. She wouldn't give them that pleasure. She returned to her desk, where the cardboard box mentioned was already waiting. She placed her few personal items inside: a photo of her father, a cactus that had miraculously survived under the fluorescent lights, some finance books. She looked at the computer screen one last time, at the report that would never be presented, and deleted it. Colleagues passed by and pretended not to see what was happening. Some hurriedly murmured, "Good luck," avoiding prolonging contact as if unemployment were contagious. Only Marcy, the receptionist who had started at the company the same day as her, came over for a hug. "I'm so sorry, Emily. It doesn't make sense. You were the best of all of us." Emily nodded, grateful for the gesture but unable to respond. If she opened her mouth, she would crumble. With the box in her arms, she walked down the same corridor she had traveled so many times, now feeling like an intruder. At the exit, she returned her badge to the security guard, who looked at her with pity. The weight of the box was insignificant compared to the weight she felt in her chest. Outside, the Chicago sky was gray, threatening rain, so aligned with her mood that it would seem cliché in a movie. Emily began to walk with no certain destination. She didn't want to go home yet and face her father's gaze, who would certainly notice something was wrong. She needed to organize her thoughts, calculate how long the severance pay would last, plan the next steps. Her feet automatically took her to Grant Park, where she used to run on Sundays, in the days when she could still reserve some time for herself. She sat on a bench near the lake, placed the box beside her, and finally allowed the tears to come. They weren't just tears of sadness or anger, but of pure fear. Her father's treatment cost almost half her salary, and without the company's health insurance coverage, expenses would increase significantly. "Are you okay?" Emily raised her eyes, startled by the interruption. A man of approximately 45 years old was observing her with a genuinely concerned expression. He wore simple but well-kept clothes, jeans, a light blue dress shirt already somewhat faded, worn but polished shoes. "Sorry to intrude, but, well, I couldn't help but notice the box." Emily quickly wiped away her tears, embarrassed. "I'm fine, thank you. I just need a moment." The man nodded, understanding. "I know that moment well. I had mine 2 years ago, except my box was bigger and much heavier." He smiled sadly. "Nathan Wilson," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Emily Parker," she replied, accepting the handshake out of politeness, but wishing he would go away. "May I?" Nathan pointed to the empty space on the bench beside her. Emily shrugged, and he sat down, maintaining a respectful distance. "Let me guess. Corporate restructuring?" Emily stared at him, surprised by the accuracy of his guess. "How do you know?" "It's the standard excuse. In my case, it was a bit more dramatic. Corruption scandal at the construction company, where I was financial director. My name was never directly mentioned, but the mud splashes on everyone. One day I was leading a team of 40 people. The next, I couldn't even schedule a job interview." There was something in the direct way he spoke that diminished Emily's initial distrust. This man wasn't trying to console her with platitudes. He was sharing a real experience. 6 years thrown away," muttered Emily, more to herself than to him. "Nothing is thrown away," replied Nathan, looking at the horizon. "Knowledge, experience, skills is all that goes with you. You just need to figure out where to apply it." Emily looked at the box beside her, at the cactus that had bravely resisted under adverse conditions. Perhaps she could learn something from that stubborn plant. "And you? What do you do now?" she asked, genuinely curious. "I'm a real estate agent. Nothing compared to what I did before, but it pays the bills, more or less." He smiled, and Emily noticed that, despite the circumstances he had described, there was a certain serenity in his gaze. "Want some coffee? There's a cafe nearby where the coffee is decent and nobody asks awkward questions." Emily hesitated. She didn't usually accept invitations from strangers, but something about this man inspired confidence. Perhaps it was the fact that he clearly understood what she was going through. "Coffee sounds good," she finally responded. "But first, I need to make a call." As Nathan discreetly moved away to give her privacy, Emily dialed her father's number. She needed to invent an excuse for her unusual arrival time. Perhaps say there was a last-minute meeting. Another lie to protect him, so he wouldn't worry about her when he already had so much to worry about. "Hello, Dad. Yes, everything's fine. I'll just be home a little later today." The cafe was a few minutes from the park. It was a small, cozy place, with wood-paneled walls and black and white photographs of old Chicago. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the space, mixing with the smell of cheese rolls coming out of the oven. Emily sat at a table in the corner, still hugging her box as if it contained something precious, not just the remains of an interrupted career. Nathan returned to the table with 2 steaming cups. "I didn't know how you like it, so I ordered a latte. I hope that's okay." "It's perfect, thank you." Emily wrapped her hands around the cup, seeking some comfort in the warmth emanating from it. "Sorry about the moment of weakness in the park. I don't usually break down like that." "Weakness?" Nathan raised his eyebrows. "I'd call it humanity. You know, they teach us that professionals don't cry, especially in public places. It's one of the biggest lies in the corporate world." Emily took a sip of coffee, observing the man in front of her. It was hard to imagine that this serene figure had once led high-level meetings or signed million-dollar contracts. There was a simplicity about him that didn't match the profile of a former executive. "You said you were a financial director. For which construction company?" "Edifice Engineering. Have you heard of it?" Emily choked on her coffee. Edifice had been involved in one of the country's biggest corruption scandals, with accusations of overcharging on public works, bribes to politicians, and money laundering. The case had made headlines for weeks. "Everyone's heard of it," she replied, unable to hide her astonishment. "But were you involved?" Nathan gave a sad smile. "That's always the first question. And no, I wasn't. But when you're a financial director, and the company is accused of embezzling millions, people assume you knew everything. The truth is that I signed documents that had gone through several approvals before reaching me. I trusted a system that proved to be corrupted." There was a disarming honesty in his words, something that made Emily believe him instantly. "And nobody believed you?" "Some did, others didn't. In the end, it didn't matter much. I was removed while investigations were ongoing, then officially dismissed. No formal charges against me, but also no company willing to hire someone with my history. I lost my house, the luxury car, the status, and you know what I discovered?" He paused, looking directly into her eyes. "That I can live without all of that." Emily lowered her gaze to her cup. She wasn't used to such personal conversations with strangers, but there was something in his story that resonated deeply with her current situation. "And how did you deal with all of that?" "Not very well at first," admitted Nathan, with a frankness that surprised Emily. "I spent entire weeks without getting out of bed in the rented room where I ended up. I drank more than I should have. I blamed everyone. Until one day I realized I had two choices: continue sinking or start over." "And you chose to start over as a real estate agent?" "Yes. It was something I knew well because of the construction company. I already had a professional license that I had gotten years ago out of curiosity. I started slowly, with referrals from the few friends who remained. It's not glamorous, and I'm far from the standard of living I had before, but it has its compensations." "What compensations?" asked Emily, genuinely interested. "Freedom, peace of mind, the chance to look in the mirror without feeling ashamed." Nathan shrugged. "And also it's rewarding to help people find their place in the world. Each apartment, each house, is the beginning of a new story for someone." Emily felt a pang of envy. While she was drowning in despair, this man seemed to have found some kind of purpose amid the chaos. "Seems like you've adapted well." "I still have my bad days," he confessed. "Days when I wonder how I let everything fall apart, but they're increasingly rare." Nathan paused, taking a sip of coffee. "And you? What did you do before the cardboard box?" "Junior financial manager at Horizon Construction," replied Emily, feeling a lump in her throat as she pronounced the title that was no longer hers. "I handled all the economic feasibility analysis of projects, cash flow, cost control. I was about to present a report that would save the company $200,000 when I was called to be dismissed." "Horizon," muttered Nathan thoughtfully. "I know them well. They're direct competitors of Edifice in several projects. And why do you think you were dismissed?" "Restructuring, according to them, but honestly I have no idea. My numbers were always excellent. I never received a negative evaluation." Emily hesitated. There was something more, something she hadn't mentioned to anyone. "Well, there was a situation with the son of the majority partner, Marcus Hamilton. He started working at the company a few months ago and let's say he confused professional relationships with personal ones." Nathan nodded, immediately understanding. "And you didn't reciprocate his interest?" "No. I made it clear that I preferred to keep our relationship strictly professional. He seemed to understand at the time, but after that, I began to notice certain looks in meetings, subtle comments about my work." "And now you're unemployed," completed Nathan. "It wouldn't be the first time something like this happens in the corporate world." Emily felt anger growing inside her. She hadn't made the connection until that moment, but now it all made sense. It wasn't a restructuring, it was retaliation. "The worst part isn't losing the job," she said with a choked voice. "It's my father. He has a rare degenerative disease. The treatment is very expensive, and without the company's health insurance—" Nathan listened attentively without interrupting. When Emily finished explaining her father's situation and her financial concerns, he remained silent for a few moments. "How long will the severance pay last?" he finally asked. 3 months, at most, if I cut all non-essential expenses. After that—" Emily didn't complete the sentence. The future beyond those 3 months seemed like a dark abyss. "So you seem to be good with numbers and financial control," observed Nathan. "It's what I do best," replied Emily without false modesty. "And you know the real estate market well, from what I understand." "I do. Horizon works with residential and commercial developments. I analyzed feasibility, financing, return on investment." Nathan drummed his fingers on the table, as if pondering something important. "You know, Emily, I've been facing some administrative difficulties in my small business. I'm good with people, I understand real estate, but the part about financial organization and processes, well, let's say it's not my forte." Emily looked at him with curiosity. "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing yet," he replied cautiously. "Just an observation. Look, I know we just met, and that you're going through a difficult time. I don't want to seem opportunistic, but maybe we could continue this conversation another time, when you're more at ease." Emily hesitated. This conversation was taking an unexpected turn. On the other hand, what was the alternative? Go home, face her father, and pretend everything was fine while her savings slipped through her fingers? "We can," she finally agreed. "But first, I need to be honest with you. I'm not in a position to invest in anything right now. If you're thinking of some kind of partnership, I have to make it clear that I'm practically without resources." Nathan smiled. "I'm not thinking about your money, Emily. I'm thinking about your skills. But as I said, we can talk about this later. Now, maybe you should go home and rest. It's been a difficult day." Emily agreed with a nod of her head. She was physically and emotionally exhausted. They exchanged phone numbers, and Nathan insisted on paying for the coffee despite her protests. As they said goodbye at the cafe door, Emily felt something strange, as if that casual encounter had a meaning she couldn't yet fully comprehend. "Thanks for the coffee and the conversation," she said, extending her hand. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Emily, despite the circumstances." Nathan shook her hand firmly. "And remember, what seems like the end is often just a disguised new beginning." Emily watched him walk away before taking the opposite path toward the bus stop. The box in her arm seemed lighter now, or perhaps it was just an impression caused by the unexpected conversation. At home, she found her father watching television in the modest living room of the apartment they shared. George Parker, at 65, retained the same vivacity in his eyes as always, despite his body increasingly limited by the disease. He was a man of medium height, graying hair, and a smile that lit up the room even on bad days. "You're early today, sweetie," he observed, turning off the television. His gaze quickly found the box in Emily's hands. What happened? Emily had rehearsed a lie during the entire journey, something about taking work home or reorganizing the office. But seeing her father's understanding look, all excuses evaporated. "I was let go, Dad." The words came out as a whisper. "Company restructuring, that's what they said." George was silent for a moment, then opened his arms. Emily put the box on the floor and nestled into her father's embrace, as she did when she was a child. The tears she had contained for most of the day returned with full force. "Everything will be all right, my daughter," murmured George, caressing her hair. "You're intelligent, capable. You'll soon find something better." Emily didn't have the courage to tell him that her main concern was how they would continue paying for the treatment, the consultations, the medications. That night, while her father slept, she sat at the kitchen table with calculator, bank statements, and bills spread out in front of her. The numbers didn't add up, no matter how she organized them. She took her phone and looked at the new contact added, "Nathan Wilson, real estate agent." Was she really considering any proposal from a man she had met just a few hours ago? Was the situation that desperate? Yes, it was, and she knew it. With trembling fingers, she typed a message. "Hi Nathan, it's Emily. About that conversation we left for later. I'm available tomorrow if you're still interested." The response came almost immediately. "Of course I am. Can we meet at the same cafe at 10 a.m.? I have a proposal that might interest us both." Emily responded, confirming the meeting, then went back to staring at the numbers in front of her. Maybe there was a way out that she couldn't see yet. Maybe that strange meeting in the park hadn't been just a coincidence. With that thought, she put away the papers and went to bed, exhausted but a little less desperate than hours before. Tomorrow was still an unknown, but for the first time that day, Emily felt that perhaps there was a path to follow. The next morning dawned with a surprisingly blue sky in Chicago, as if nature wanted to contrast with the whirlwind of emotions that Emily was facing. She arrived at the cafe 10 minutes before the scheduled time, wearing the only outfit that still maintained a professional air without seeming too formal. black dress pants, and a simple navy blue blouse. She had carefully combed her brown hair and applied light makeup in an attempt to hide the deep circles under her eyes from a night of poor sleep. Nathan was already there, sitting at the same table as the day before, with 2 organized folders in front of him and an open laptop. He wore jeans and a simple white shirt, but there was something different about his demeanor, an energy, a determination that Emily hadn't noticed in their first meeting. "Good morning," he greeted, standing up to pull out the chair for Emily. Punctual, like a good finance professional. "Hard habit to break," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she actually felt. "So, you mentioned a proposal?" Nathan smiled. "Straight to the point, I like that." He pushed one of the folders toward Emily. "Before we talk about the proposal, I want to show you something. This is my current situation." Emily opened the folder and found bank statements, expense spreadsheets, brokerage contracts, a client list, and some tax documents. At first glance, it seemed like a modest but organized business. However, upon analyzing the numbers more carefully, she noticed several problems: inconsistent cash flow, very low profit margin in some operations, lack of provision for taxes, inadequate expense control. "I'll be honest," said Emily after a few minutes of analysis. "You're surviving, not thriving. There are several points that could be optimized here." "Exactly what I thought you'd say," replied Nathan, not seeming offended. "Now, look at this." He opened the second folder. This contained detailed profiles of potential clients, analyses of the real estate market in specific Chicago neighborhoods, news clippings about industry trends, and a list of investor contacts. "These are clients I haven't been able to adequately serve in recent months," explained Nathan. "Some wanted financing that I didn't know how to structure. Others had specific demands that required more complex financial analyses. And this group here," he pointed to a specific page, "are investors interested in small developments, but they need well-founded projects with risk analyses and reliable projections." Emily began to understand where he was going. "You have the contacts and market knowledge, but you can't capitalize on that because you lack the financial and administrative structure." "Precisely," agreed Nathan, with a gleam in his eye. "And that's where you come in. What do you think about working together? A partnership, you handle the financial part, organization, processes, feasibility analyses. I handle the contacts, negotiations, client prospecting." Emily frowned, pondering. "A partnership? You mean opening a company together? That would require investment, and, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm not in a position to—" "I'm not asking for money," interrupted Nathan. "I'm proposing an exchange, knowledge and work. We'd start small using what we already have. My real estate license, my contacts, your financial knowledge, your analytical capacity. And where would we work? We'd need an office, equipment. My apartment has a room I don't use. It's small, but enough to start. I have an extra laptop that was my niece's. It's practically new. And for the first few months, until we establish a constant flow, we could split the commissions. 60% for company expenses, including a fixed monthly amount for each of us, and 40% reinvested in the business." It was a risky proposal, perhaps even senseless considering they barely knew each other. However, there was a logic in the combination of their skills, and Emily didn't have many options at the moment. "And if it doesn't work out?" she asked, expressing her biggest concern. "Then we'll have tried," replied Nathan, with a simplicity that disarmed Emily. "Look, I'm not going to lie and say it's guaranteed. It's not. But what do you have to lose considering the current situation?" Emily reflected for a moment. What did she have to lose? Time, perhaps. Energy. The possibility of looking for a formal job while venturing into this uncertain partnership. On the other hand, the chances of quickly getting a new job that paid enough to maintain her father's treatment were remote in the current economic scenario. "I need to think about my father," she said finally. "His treatment is an absolute priority for me." "I completely understand," nodded Nathan, "and that's precisely why I suggest we start immediately. The sooner we establish a revenue stream, the better for you and your father." Emily pondered again, looking at the open folders in front of her. There was potential there that was undeniable, and something in the way Nathan spoke conveyed confidence, not the arrogant confidence of the executives she had known, but a quiet assurance of someone who had faced the worst and survived. "Let's do this," she proposed. "Give me a week. During that period, I'll organize all of this." She pointed to the folder with the financial documents. create a basic business plan, and establish the initial processes. At the end of the week, I present it to you and we decide whether to move forward." Nathan smiled, extending his hand. "Deal. And meanwhile, I'll contact some potential clients, so we have something to work with if we decide to proceed." They sealed the agreement with a handshake, and Emily felt a strange mixture of apprehension and hope. It was a leap in the dark, but something told her it was worth trying. The following days passed in a blur of intense activity. Emily dedicated herself fully to analyzing Nathan's documents, creating spreadsheets, establishing processes, structuring a viable business model. She worked in the small improvised office they set up in the room of his apartment, a desk made of wooden crates, 2 mismatched chairs, a white board fixed to the wall, and the 2 laptops connected to a borrowed multifunction printer. Nathan, in turn, spent his days in meetings with potential clients, some old, some new, presenting the idea of a differentiated real estate consultancy, focused on people looking to restart their lives in new spaces. At the end of the week, when Emily presented the business plan, even she was surprised by the result. What had begun as a vague proposal had transformed into something concrete, with realistic projections and a clear growth strategy. "This is impressive," commented Nathan after examining the material. "You did in 1 week what I couldn't do in 2 years trying alone." "It's just the beginning," replied Emily, trying not to show the pride she felt. "We still have a lot of work ahead." "So does this mean we're officially in partnership?" he asked with a hopeful smile. Emily hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Yes, we are. But I need to be transparent about something. If a formal job opportunity arises that covers my father's needs, I'll have to seriously consider it." "That's fair," agreed Nathan. "I only ask that if that happens, you give me time to find a solution that works for both of us." They sealed the new agreement with another handshake, and thus was born Fresh Start Real Estate Consulting, a name suggested by Emily that reflected both their personal history and the value proposition they offered to clients. The first months were challenging. They worked from Monday to Sunday, often until late at night. Emily divided her time between the new business and caring for her father, whose health oscillated between periods of relative stability and moments of crisis that required hospital visits. Savings dwindled rapidly, despite the first commissions that were beginning to come in. It was during one of these crises, when George needed to be hospitalized for a respiratory complication, that the partnership between Emily and Nathan was truly tested. "We can't afford a private room," explained Emily to the doctor, with a choked voice. "The health insurance expired and we're paying out of pocket, but it will have to be in the ward." Nathan, who had accompanied her to the hospital after an exhausting day showing properties, observed the scene in silence. Hours later, when Emily left to buy a coffee, he approached the doctor privately and arranged for George's transfer to a semi-private room, using his own credit card to cover the difference. When Emily discovered it, she confronted him in the hospital corridor. "What did you do?" she asked, divided between gratitude and embarrassment. "I can't accept this, Nathan. We don't have money to reimburse you now." "I'm not asking for reimbursement," he replied, with a tranquility that contrasted with her agitation. "Your father deserves comfort, Emily. And we're partners, remember? Partners help each other. But this is personal. It has no relation to the business." "For me, it does. Your father is part of the equation. Without him stable, you can't fully concentrate, and we need you focused to make this business take off." Nathan smiled, trying to ease the tension. "Besides, consider it an advance on your share of future profits." Emily felt tears forming, but held them back. She wasn't used to receiving help. She had always been the one who took care of others, who solved problems. Accepting Nathan's generosity meant admitting a vulnerability she didn't know how to handle. "Thank you," she said finally in a low voice. "I'll reimburse you as soon as we can." "Don't worry about that now," insisted Nathan. "We have an important client tomorrow, Mrs. Olson. Remember her? The widow who wants to buy a smaller apartment after selling the house where she lived for 40 years. She needs all our attention." Emily nodded, grateful for the change of subject. "Yes, I prepared the financial analysis you requested. Considering the value of the house sale and what she can invest, I selected 3 apartment options that fit her profile." "Excellent. Now go home and rest a bit. Your father is stable and the nurse has my number in case something happens. Tomorrow we need to be at our best." Emily obeyed, not because she really wanted to leave, but because she was too exhausted to argue. In the taxi on the way home, she reflected on how her life had changed drastically in just a few months. From financial manager at a large construction company to partner in a small real estate consultancy, from an independent professional to someone who needed to accept help. Strangely, despite all the difficulties, she didn't regret the decision made that morning at the cafe. There was something genuinely rewarding about building something from scratch, seeing the direct results of her work, helping people find not just properties but new beginnings for their stories. And there was Nathan, the man she had met in one of the worst moments of her life and who, inexplicably, had become a constant and comforting presence. He wasn't just a partner, Emily realized at that moment. He was a friend, perhaps even more than that, something she wasn't yet ready to name or explore. In the empty and silent apartment, Emily took a hot shower and allowed herself to cry, finally releasing all the accumulated tension. Afterward, she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and continued working on the analyses for Mrs. Olson, seeking refuge from confusing thoughts in the activity. The phone rang shortly after 11 at night. It was from the hospital. Emily answered with her heart racing, fearing bad news about her father, but to her surprise it was him on the phone. "Sweetheart," said George, with a stronger voice than in recent days, "this friend of yours, Nathan, he's a good man." "What did he do now, Dad?" asked Emily, concerned. "Besides putting me in this comfortable room, he stopped by a little while ago, brought my favorite newspaper, and sat talking with me about baseball for almost an hour. He said you were working on something important for tomorrow, and that he came to keep me company so you could concentrate." Emily felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. "He didn't tell me he was going to visit you. Probably because he knew you would insist on going along even though you're exhausted." George paused. "Sweetheart, I don't know exactly what's happening between you two, but I want you to know that I approve. It's been a long time since I've seen that sparkle in your eyes when you talk about him. Dad, it's not like that at all. We're just partners, business partners." "If you say so," replied George, with a tone of someone who didn't believe it for a second. "Well, I just called to say that I'm fine and that your partner is a man of character. Now I'm going to sleep. Good night, sweetheart." Emily hung up the phone and stared at the laptop screen, not really seeing what was there. What was happening? Why did Nathan care so much? And why did the mere idea that there might be something more between them make her heart race that way? She shook her head, trying to push those thoughts away. It wasn't the time for emotional complications. She had a sick father to care for, a fragile business to develop, bills to pay. Romantic relationships were a luxury she couldn't afford at that moment. Even so, when she finally went to bed, the last image that passed through her mind before falling asleep was Nathan's smile and the comforting sensation of his presence in the most difficult hours. 6 months had passed since the formation of Fresh Start Real Estate Consulting. The small improvised office in Nathan's living room had been replaced by a modest but functional commercial space in an office building in Lincoln Park. It wasn't luxurious, with its second-hand furniture carefully restored and minimalist decoration, but it conveyed exactly the message they wanted: welcoming and a new beginning. The business was growing at a steady pace. The unique approach they had developed, focused on people looking to restart their lives in new spaces, attracted a specific and loyal audience. Divorced people looking for a new home, elderly people who needed to move to smaller and more practical apartments, young people buying their first property, families who had faced financial setbacks and needed to restructure their real estate assets. Emily had finally found a balance between work and caring for her father, who had recovered from his last crisis and now attended a senior center 3 times a week, allowing her to dedicate more time to the business on those days. The experimental treatment she had so desired for him had begun 2 months ago, financed by the growing profits of the consultancy, and the initial results were promising. That Friday morning, Emily was focused on analyzing a new development that might interest several of her clients when the phone rang. It was a number she didn't immediately recognize. Fresh Start Real Estate Consulting, Emily Parker speaking. "Emily, it's Robert from Horizon Construction." Her ex-boss's voice caused her stomach to knot instantly. 6 months had passed, but the memory of that humiliating day was still fresh in her mind. "Robert, what a surprise." Her voice came out colder than she had intended, but she didn't try to correct it. "I need to speak with you in person. It's delicate. Can we meet today?" Emily hesitated. She had no interest in reliving the past or in hearing late explanations. On the other hand, curiosity was hard to ignore. "I'm quite busy today. What is this about exactly?" Robert sighed on the other end of the line. "It's about your dismissal. There are circumstances you need to know, and I also have a proposal to make." Emily felt anger growing inside her. A proposal? After everything that had happened? "Any proposal can be made by phone," she replied, maintaining a professional tone despite the emotion. "Not this one. Please, Emily, 1 hour of your time, that's all, at the cafe near the construction company at 4. After a few more minutes of insistence, Emily finally agreed, more to end the conversation than out of real interest. When she hung up, she realized that Nathan was watching her from her office door. "Problems?" he asked, entering and sitting in the chair in front of her desk. Emily told him about the call without hiding her irritation. "I don't know what he wants after so much time, but honestly, I don't have patience for corporate games." "Are you going?" "Yes. Just to close this chapter once and for all." Emily paused, then asked what was really bothering her. "Do you think they might want to hire me back?" Nathan pondered for a moment. "It's possible. You were very good at what you did there. Maybe they've realized their mistake. And if that's it, if they offer my job back, maybe even with a promotion and a raise." The question hung in the air, loaded with unspoken implications. "Then you'll have a decision to make," replied Nathan, with a neutrality that didn't match the tension in his eyes. "It would be understandable if you accepted. Stability, benefits, health insurance for your father. But what about the consultancy? Our partnership?" Nathan shrugged, trying to seem casual. "We'd find a solution. Maybe hire someone with your profile, or I could try to take over your functions temporarily while we look for a suitable replacement." Emily felt a tightness in her chest, hearing the words, "suitable replacement." It was strange how the idea of leaving Fresh Start, which months ago would have been an obvious and rational decision, now seemed almost like a betrayal, not just to Nathan, but to herself and what they had built together. "We still don't know what he wants," she said finally. "It might not be any of that." "True. Well, keep me informed." Nathan stood up, preparing to leave. At the door, he turned again. "Emily, regardless of what happens, I want you to know that these last few months have been special to me, not just because of the business." Before Emily could respond, he left, leaving her with a whirlwind of contradictory emotions. What was Nathan trying to say? And why did her heart race that way? At 4 o'clock sharp, Emily entered the cafe where she had arranged to meet Robert. He was already there, looking older and more tired than she remembered. He wore the same type of expensive suit and had a leather folder on the table. "Emily, thank you for coming," he greeted, standing up to pull out the chair for her. "Would you like to order something?" "No, thank you. I have little time, Robert. Let's get straight to the point." Robert cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "Right. Well, first I need to be honest with you. Your dismissal, it wasn't because of restructuring." "I know," replied Emily, surprising him. "It was because of Marcus Hamilton, the son of the majority partner. He didn't like it when I rejected his advances." Robert seemed genuinely shocked. "How did you—" It wasn't hard to put the pieces together. The timing, the way everything happened. "Yes, you're right. Marcus demanded your departure, threatened to create problems if we didn't do it. I gave in, and I deeply regret it." Robert seemed sincerely regretful, but Emily didn't feel the compassion she expected to feel. "Why tell me this now? The damage is already done." "Because things have changed. Marcus left the company. He had problems with other employees, not just you. His father finally realized the problem and sent him to the overseas branch. And Robert hesitated. "Well, I want to fix my mistake." "We want you back, Emily." Even having already considered this possibility, hearing the proposal concretely made Emily feel a mix of vindication and discomfort. "In what position?" "Senior financial manager, more responsibilities, your own team, salary 40% higher than you had before, annual bonus based on results, and of course all benefits, including the top health insurance plan for you and your father." Robert opened the folder and pushed a document toward her. "Here's the formal proposal. You can analyze it at your leisure." Emily took the paper, but didn't read it immediately. Instead, she looked directly into her ex-boss's eyes. Why should I trust Horizon again? You discarded me without thinking twice. Because we're a solid company, Emily. What happened was a mistake. We're admitting that. And also, Robert hesitated again. I'll be honest, we really miss you. No one has been able to adequately replace you. That report you were preparing on the day of your dismissal? If we had implemented it, we would have saved much more than the 200,000 you projected. Emily nodded slowly, now looking at the proposal in her hands. The numbers were impressive, far beyond what the small consultancy could offer her in the short term. With that salary, she could provide her father not just with basic treatment, but all the complementary care that would improve his quality of life. She could pay off debts, build a solid financial reserve, maybe even buy a better apartment. When would you need my answer? Monday would be ideal. We have a board meeting on Tuesday, and I'd like to announce your return. Emily put the proposal in her purse and stood up. I'll think about it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other commitments. She left the cafe feeling strangely empty. The vindication she expected to feel didn't come. Instead, there was only a difficult decision to make. At the Fresh Start office, she found Nathan talking animatedly with an elderly lady. Mrs. Olson, their first important client, who now referred friends and relatives to them. "Emily," exclaimed the lady upon seeing her, "I was just thanking you both. My daughter loved the apartment you found for her. You really have a gift for understanding what people need, not just what they say they want." Emily smiled, genuinely touched. "It's a pleasure to be able to help, Mrs. Olson." After the client left, Nathan looked at Emily expectantly. "So, how did it go?" Emily explained everything in detail, including the confession about the true reason for her dismissal and the proposal to return. When she finished, she took the document from her purse and placed it on the table between them. "What do you think?" Nathan examined the proposal carefully, his face a mask of professional neutrality. "It's an excellent offer. Financially, it makes complete sense to accept it. But," Emily knew him well enough to know there was more. "But nothing. It's your decision, Emily. You built a solid career there before all this happened. It would be natural to want to resume it. Nathan, be honest with me. What do you really think?" He sighed, finally dropping the mask of neutrality. "Honestly, I think you deserve something better than going back to people who discarded you when it was convenient. I think we've been building something meaningful here. Something that's ours based on values we share," and he paused, clearly debating internally about how much he should reveal. "And I think I would miss you very much if you left, not just as a partner." Emily's heart raced. It was the first time Nathan had so openly expressed what seemed to be growing between them in recent months. "I would miss you too," she admitted in a low voice, "but I have to think about my father, his treatment." "I know, and I'll support any decision you make." Nathan extended his hand, covering hers on the table. "I just ask that you consider all the variables, not just the financial ones." Emily nodded, feeling the warmth of his hand on hers. "I need time to think." The weekend was a torture of indecision. Emily oscillated between moments of absolute certainty that she should accept Horizon's proposal and periods of equally strong conviction that her place was at Fresh Start beside Nathan. On Sunday night, still without a clear decision, she decided to visit her father in the small apartment he now occupied alone, since she had moved to a place closer to the new office. George was watching a baseball game when she arrived, looking healthier than in recent years. The experimental treatment was showing encouraging results, giving him an energy that Emily hadn't seen since before the diagnosis. "So," he said after hearing about Horizon's proposal, "are you going back there?" "I don't know, Dad. It's a very good proposal financially. We could have more comfort, security. Your treatment would be guaranteed by their health insurance, which is excellent." George observed his daughter for a long moment. "And what happens with your partner? With the company you created?" "Nathan says we'll find a solution. Maybe hire someone to replace me." "And is that what you want, to be replaced there?" Her father's direct question caught her by surprise. "It's not about what I want, Dad. It's about what's sensible, safer for us." "Sweetheart," George leaned forward, looking her in the eyes, "I spent my whole life working at a job I hated because it was sensible, safe. I missed precious moments with you and your mother because of that. And now, seeing you build something of your own, with so much enthusiasm and purpose, I don't want you to give that up because of me." But your treatment, my treatment is going well. The consultancy has given enough profit to cover it so far, hasn't it? And it will continue to grow from what you tell me. Yes, but it's risky. A small company in a volatile market. Life is risky, Emily. Believe someone who has seen many safe plans crumble overnight. George paused, then added with a mischievous smile, "Besides, there's Nathan." Emily felt her face warm up. What about him? Oh, sweetheart, don't play me for a fool. I see how your eyes sparkle when you talk about him, and he's clearly crazy about you. That man sold his car to pay for my hospitalization. Who does that for a partner? Emily couldn't help but smile, remembering that gesture that had caught her so off guard. He's a good person. He's more than that, and you know it. The question is, are you ready to admit that to yourself? The conversation with her father continued for some time, but deep down Emily knew the decision had already been made. When she said goodbye, kissing her father's forehead, she felt a clarity she hadn't experienced since receiving the proposal. The next morning, she called Robert early. "I appreciate the offer and the recognition," she said with a firm voice, "but I must decline. I've built something new, something I believe in, and I can't abandon it now." Robert tried to argue, even suggested an even better counteroffer, but Emily was unyielding. When she hung up, she felt an enormous weight lifting from her shoulders. She headed to the office with light steps, anxious to tell Nathan her decision. However, upon arriving there, she found an unexpected situation. Nathan was talking with an elegant woman, whom Emily immediately recognized. Louise Martin, one of the consultancy's most recent and important clients. "This is outrageous," shouted Louise, visibly upset. "You knew my son has special needs. How could you show an apartment without adequate accessibility?" "Mrs. Martin, there's been a misunderstanding," Nathan tried to explain, keeping calm. "The apartment does have accessibility, just not in the way you expected. If you'll allow me to show you the floor plan again." "I don't want to see any floor plan. I've already wasted too much time with you. I'm going to look for a real estate agency, with professionals who don't discriminate against people with disabilities." "No one is discriminating against your son," intervened Emily, approaching. "We even requested additional adaptations to the condominium, which were approved at the meeting last week." "Too late," retorted Louise, grabbing her purse. "I've already made my decision, and I advise you to prepare yourselves. I won't stay quiet about how I was treated here." With those words she left, slamming the door, leaving Emily and Nathan stunned. "What happened?" asked Emily, confused. Nathan ran his hand through his hair, visibly shaken. "I'm not sure. I showed the apartment to her and her son yesterday, explained all the planned adaptations. They seemed satisfied. Today she showed up like this, furious, accusing us of discrimination. It doesn't make sense." In the following weeks, the situation worsened dramatically. Louise made posts on social media accusing Fresh Start of discrimination, and soon negative comments appeared from people who weren't even clients. The phone stopped ringing, meetings were cancelled, and the consultancy, which was finally beginning to prosper, suddenly found itself on the brink of collapse. Nathan, always so strong and optimistic, seemed defeated. "Maybe you should have accepted Horizon's proposal," he commented one night, as they closed the practically empty office. "At least you wouldn't be sinking with me in this boat." "Don't say that," replied Emily, approaching him. "We'll overcome this together. We just need to understand what really happened." It was then that Emily decided to investigate on her own. Something in that situation didn't make sense. Why would a satisfied client change her opinion so radically overnight? Using her knowledge in financial analysis and some contacts in the real estate sector, Emily began to follow clues. She discovered that Louise had closed a deal with a competing real estate agency just one day after her explosion at Fresh Start, insufficient time to have visited other properties. More suspicious still, the agent who served her, August Newman, had worked at the same construction company as Nathan before the scandal. After more investigations, Emily found what she was looking for: messages exchanged between August and Louise days before the supposed fight, arranging the performance. The objective was simple: destroy Fresh Start's reputation so August's real estate agency could absorb its clients. The motivation, also clear: revenge against Nathan, whom August unjustly blamed for having implicated him in the construction company scandal years before. Armed with this evidence, Emily confronted Louise and August separately. The former, embarrassed at being discovered, agreed to publicly retract. The latter, more resistant, eventually gave in when Emily threatened to take the evidence to the authorities. The next day, Louise published a complete retraction on her social media, admitting she had been manipulated into making false accusations. The news spread quickly and gradually clients began to return. The crisis, which had almost destroyed everything they had built, ended up serving as a trial by fire for the partnership between Emily and Nathan. On a rainy night, after a long day of work rebuilding the consultancy's reputation, Emily and Nathan were alone in the office. The silence between them carried the weight of all the words unsaid in recent months. "You could have gone back to Horizon when all this started," commented Nathan, breaking the silence. "Robert would probably still accept." Emily looked at him, finally realizing what he was trying to say. "You think I would stay only until things got difficult? What kind of person do you think I am?" "It's not that," he replied, approaching. "It's that you deserve more than this roller coaster our consultancy has been. Security, stability. If I wanted security and stability, I would have accepted their proposal that very day." Emily took a step in his direction. "I stayed because I believe in what we're building, because this place, this idea of helping people restart, means something to me." "Only because of that?" asked Nathan, with his eyes fixed on hers. "No. I also stayed because of you." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with a truth that both had avoided for months. Nathan touched Emily's face gently, as if fearing she might disappear. "I would have understood if you had left," he murmured. "But I'm immensely happy that you stayed." That night, under the rain that washed Chicago, they finally admitted what their hearts had known for a long time, that they were more than just partners, more than friends. That, amid all the uncertainties and difficulties, they had found in each other much more than they expected when they met on that park bench. 3 years had passed. Fresh start. Real estate consulting was no longer a small business struggling to survive. It had become a reference in the market, specializing in helping people in moments of transition find not just a property, but a true new beginning for their lives. The modest office had been replaced by a spacious and welcoming headquarters, with a team of 10 people who shared the same values and the same passion for making a difference in clients' lives. George, Emily's father, was stable. The experimental treatment had been a success, allowing him to live with a quality of life far beyond the initial expectations of the doctors. Now he spent 3 days a week at the consultancy, where he had become a kind of mascot and informal counselor, always ready with a kind word or an inspiring story for clients in difficult moments. Emily and Nathan had married in a simple ceremony in the garden of the new house they bought together. A house that, as they liked to remember, had been the first property they officially sold as a consultancy. The ceremony had gathered clients who became friends, colleagues who became family, and all the people who were part of that unlikely journey that had begun with a dismissal and a casual encounter. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Emily, Nathan, and George were walking through Grant Park, taking Sophie, the couple's 2-year-old daughter, to feed the ducks. As they passed by the bench where they had met, they stopped for a moment, in a kind of silent ritual they repeated whenever they visited the park. It was then that they noticed a young woman sitting alone on that same bench. She was approximately the same age Emily had been on that fateful day, and on her lap she held a cardboard box with office belongings. Her eyes were teary, and her lost gaze reflected the same despair that Emily had known so well. Emily and Nathan exchanged glances. They didn't need words to understand what the other was thinking. With a smile, Emily handed Sophie to her grandfather to hold and approached the young woman. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Is everything all right?" The young woman quickly wiped away her tears, embarrassed. "Yes, I just need a moment." "Tough day at work?" asked Nathan, stopping beside Emily. The young woman looked at the box in her lap and nodded. "Ex-work, actually. I was let go today, restructuring, that's what they said." Emily smiled, sitting down beside her. "You know, a few years ago I was exactly where you are now. Same bench, same box, same tears. And just look at her now," completed Nathan, with an affectionate smile for his wife. The young woman looked at the couple with curiosity. "What happened afterward?" "A long story," replied Emily. "How about some coffee? That cafe over there serves decent coffee, and nobody asks awkward questions." As they walked toward the cafe, with George and Sophie following right behind, Emily and Nathan intertwined their hands, aware of the incredible cycle that life sometimes creates. For they understood more than anyone that sometimes on the worst days, life decides to begin again, and that it just takes a conversation, a warm coffee, or an extended hand for everything to change. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that Emily and Nathan's story has touched your hearts. To discover more exciting stories like this one, which show us the power of new beginnings and second chances, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives. Find it right here by clicking on the link to the left. If you enjoyed this journey of overcoming and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day, we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and human relationships. Leave in the comments if you have ever experienced a transformative new beginning in your lives. We would love to know your stories too. Until next time,